There is such a thing as deliberate, conscious, intentional thinking. In it, you think not mechanically, not because your attention is caught by something or because someone says something, but because from yourself you say, I'm going to think in a certain way in order to achieve a certain beneficial aim for myself. I'm going to deliberately think, voluntarily think, in a certain way so that I can, what? So I can wake up. So I can become a different kind of person. So I can begin to understand how my mind works, how my feelings work. So I want you to start right now with me performing a very simple one. It's very simple, very elementary, and very beneficial. I want you to do some deliberate thinking right now as follows. First of all, start with the physical. That's good. You're all one person operating in different ways. You have a physical body. Now, first of all, just relax the physical body as I'm doing here now, and let the hands hang loose. Speak whatever is normally comfortable to you. Do it deliberately. And the more you resist doing this, the better it's going to be for you, because you're giving yourself the necessary shock. We're so much in the habit of being tied up without even knowing it. The jaw, the fists, the feet, anything at all. And if you feel as if you're losing part of yourself, good. Do it. This is part of the leap we talk about. You can just sit here and feel you're losing something that is beneficial. See? Because we have the unconscious idea how strange it is that a certain physical position is protective and keeps me intact. It keeps neurosis intact, which was what we're trying to get rid of. So it's always good. Do it during the day at your work or at home to deliberately relax like this. But this is just the beginning. You've done that, fine. You might even feel yourself taking a deep breath. And how long has it been, by the way, since you've taken a deep breath? A long time, hasn't it? See? Okay. Now, if you can relax the physical muscles by deliberate voluntary thinking, which you can also begin to relax psychologically the same way. I've been watching you as you came in here and sat down, and oh, the things you have to drop. I've seen, just in the last 3 minutes, I've seen unconscious worry, I've seen tension, I've seen bewilderment, I've seen tightness, defensiveness. If you've got any defensiveness toward what you're going to hear today, by a deliberate act, drop it. And if you feel frightened at doing that, hooray. You may think I'm talking about something that doesn't refer to you. It does indeed. Because wherever we do have this worry, this anxiety, this hope that things will stay in place so I'm not more scared than I am, wherever we have this, we do have a defensive position. You remember we've said many times that when you have, now listen to this, when you have no defenses at all, you are free. You're out of it. No defenses at all. Which means that through long and hard work, you've seen the falsity, the phoniness, the horror of keeping this pseudo-personality in place. I'm going to ask you, and you answer to yourself, and to me too, what good has it done you protecting what you've called yourself up until now. It hasn't done you a bit of good. It has got you into all these problems. Remember all the problems we've got into with other people? Just take that, if nothing else. Getting mixed up with the wrong people. All this tense self-concern as to what's going to happen to me. And if I can just make enough plans, if I can just think right and figure it out, I'll be safe. And we never were we? We still stay just as much afraid as we were before. Nothing I do works. So you make a deliberate aim right now, right at the beginning of this series of 3 talks, to do this. To go against what you have usually done in your attitudes, in classes, or out in the world for that matter, to deliberately drop any wrong attitudes in yourself right now. Tension would be one of them. Challenging would be another one. I don't mean right questioning. I mean a defensive challenging, if you can see it in yourself. So that a new you begins to listen to what is said here and to absorb the very atmosphere here. That is learning. You have no idea of how fortunate you are to be here this morning, to be in this room. Because your very presence here is a learning. Just to be here. You'll see it. You'll see. You feel it now a little bit. You'll see. We use words. We have to use words and ideas and maybe gestures, things like that. But all unknown to ourselves, we are learning something because we've got part of us out of the way. This part that is always fighting. Something happens to us, unexpected, something disappointing, and we have the automatic reaction of fighting it, trying to comfort ourselves, whatever it might be. All that sort of fighting must end. So that I don't live the way I have lived up until this point of my life. So I'm out of it, completely out of it. And not afraid anymore. I won't ask you to raise your hands, but do consider the question, how many things frighten me? Both in the outer world, some of the news headlines you see, but that isn't the big one, believe me. The big one is 8 o'clock in the morning and I go out into the world every Monday morning. How on earth am I going to get this self through another day without getting it into trouble, without saying something stupid or damaging, without swelling up in resentment when somebody does something I think they shouldn't do? How am I going to get through the day? You're going to learn here in this class, in these classes, how to go through your day without any self-concern at all. And now we're going to find out how, starting right now. There are certain key thoughts that we can start with, and we're going to take one of them this morning and discuss it for a while, then we'll discuss it openly with questions and answers a little later. And if you're going to write anything down, you can write this down. It's not necessary. If you want to, you can. Here's the key thought, but do remember it. Keep it in your mind, because we're going to go all around it, like we go outside of this house and see it from different viewpoints so that we can understand what it's all about. Shut it off for a minute, Warren. We'll wait. Do write down the following. There is no permanent self that moves forward in time. There is no permanent self that moves forward in time. The depths of this. All right, now we're going to talk about it. We're going to see it from every possible viewpoint. I hope you understand that there's nothing on earth more practical than this. Do you understand this? Would you rather talk about making money or becoming more popular? If I have no permanent self that moves forward in time, which I don't have, how can I have any problems? I said any problems. If there is no one there who says on Monday, well, if on Wednesday I can get the raise, or get that woman, or get rid of that woman, or get that man, or get rid of that man, or if I can be accepted by that group, or if I can be in better health. There's no one there to ask the question, which there isn't, then how can you have any problems at all toward the future? As for the past, why do you think about it at all except as it serves practical purposes, such as doing your business down at the office or around the home? Okay. On Monday morning, about 10:30, at work, you notice the boss looking at you kind of oddly, and you wonder what it's all about, and it makes you a little nervous, and you make mistakes on your writing because you're nervous about it. And finally he gets up enough nerve to come over and tell you, I'm sorry, but business is bad. We have to let you go. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. How many things similar to this happened to you all week long? I don't mean that. I mean anything. You have a quarrel with someone so that there is a crisis in you. Follow, this is examples only. Do you understand? It may not happen to you. You may have $1 million. I don't know. So the boss says this to you, and you have a reaction. What would they be? You'd have to find out, wouldn't you? Of anxiety over it, maybe fear, how am I going to pay the rent next month? How about shame of going home and telling my wife and husband that I've been laid off? This is a very cruel world. We're not denying that. The whole thing is all fouled up by man. But you're in this world, and we're in it to be free of it. I don't care how bad it is out there. You have no business blaming that. That's a diversion. That's cowardice. Okay. So, what was it? Wednesday he fired us? Look, if you were to come here every time, listen, work, read the right books, work on yourself out there, you would look up at the boss. You might even smile. You might not. It all depends. You might look up at him, and you would acknowledge what he said. He said, I'm sorry, this will be your last day. We just can't afford you anymore. The business is failing. Or whatever. My son is taking your place. That would be even worse. Wouldn't that be better? That'd make you more angry, wouldn't it? So you look up the boss, and you acknowledge, I understand, thank you, thank you for firing me. And you go back to your work, and you're very kind, you're not shaken up anymore. You're awake, you're alive, you're not dead, you're not a slave to these exterior influences. And you go right back to work, and you say, okay, now 6 and 6 make 12, not 14, so I'll do it right. Your attention is on what you're doing at the moment instead of on the fact, my God, what has life done to me again? This is what we're after. And you know why you can do it? Because there is no permanent self that moves forward in time. Remember we talked about instant recovery last time? We won't go into that now, but it connects with it. Do you understand? Huh? No. Okay, at 10:30 the boss, let's recreate the scene again. At 10:30 the boss comes over and he looked kind of guilty about it, and he has all kind of his own problems all mixed up when he had a fight with his wife this morning and all that. And he tells me that I'm gone, that's the end of my work. Why on earth would I ever get upset over it? Why would I feel bad? Why would I feel tense or nervous? Ashamed maybe? Hostile? Why would I feel it at all? It's very, very simple. So simple we don't see it. Because I think that I exist. I think that I exist as a person, for example, who should be treated in a certain way by society, by life, by the boss. I think that I exist as a distinct person who is treated either goodly or badly, if those are words, by the outside world. What if I saw deeply, thoroughly, experimentally, personally, that there is no one there at all? How would I react? I would react from a free self, from a free mind, from a free spirit, free emotions. I would look up and acknowledge the fact that I'm no longer working there. Do you see that that is all there is to it? But you and I cannot continue to hang on to the delusions, the lies, and the pains if we want this new life, this totally new life, this new birth, mental rebirth, spiritual rebirth. Now you're asking, yeah, but I still have a family to feed. It's very simple too. You're fired on Wednesday. On Thursday morning, you go out and knock on every door you can. You go out and find work. Do what you can. Don't you know? The trouble with you, you've had it too easy. You haven't had enough problems, enough shocks yet. You think you have. Some of you may have had severe problems, but you took it wrongly. You're still covering it up. You're sitting here right now in this room, not knowing the violence that you have in you. You don't know how many tears you have left in you either. You'd like to cry a lot more, wouldn't you? You'd like to scream, wouldn't you? I know. You can be very grateful that you are seen through here at these meetings. So, we're here to find out that we are fictitious, artificial human beings. As phony as those plastic apples that were over there. But this is what should make you so excited. You'd go 10,000 miles to come here for an hour and a half. You won't let anything stand in the way. And the anything always being our own neurosis, our own sickness, our own resistance. That is the problem, not someone out there. If you let anyone influence you to keep you away from a meeting like this, it is your fault. You found that a handy excuse, and you're actually grateful. A false part of you is grateful that other person said, don't go. Don't you listen to anyone who's trying to keep you from waking up. And they will do it in one way or another. But that's not the point here this morning. Now, let's see how we can begin, just begin, to get rid of this nervous, frightened, resentful human being that we have been up until now. I touched on one of them briefly, and I'll repeat it briefly. If I can just stop fighting, that in itself would be a good start. Stop fighting to hang on to what I call myself, because it gives me a certain pseudo-security. But you're not secure at all, are you? But let me give you another one. You might want to write this down too. I'll make it 2 words, very simple. You can remember it almost. The 2 words are endure doubt. Endure doubt. If you're down in the city of Wickenberg, which we are now, but if you were down in the heart of town and you were trying to get to, say, a cafe, you ask someone how to get there and he gave you wrong directions. You ask a second person, he gave you wrong directions. You ask a third person, still got wrong directions. You might come to the conclusion that no one knows. So maybe you'd better do something you've never done before in your life. You begin to think for yourself and to act for yourself and to search for yourself. You go down this street, no cafe. You go down that street, no cafe. This street, no cafe. Finally you find the cafe. Now that's the end of the illustration, but can you drop all these thousands of ideas that your parents gave you, that society gave you, that the church gave you, that you picked up here and there from your friends? You were impressed by them because they sounded so authoritative. Can you have no idea at all as to how to get out? Think about that for a minute. No idea at all as to how to get out. If you had no idea at all how to get out, you would be out. Because the idea stands in the way. The idea is thinking, and all thinking is conditioned in one way or another. You even, ladies, you cook like Mama or the home economics teacher in junior high school taught you to cook. Your own experiments. So all thinking is conditioned in one way or another. So we're conditioned as to how to get out, or how to avoid facing the crisis that I need to get out. If I can just fill my life with enough activities, with enough meetings on Wednesday night and Sunday afternoon, enough television activities, if I can just load it, then maybe I won't have to look and see how scared I am. False personality, the false self, is built around ideas, thoughts, which come together in a cluster to tell me I am this kind of person. I am owed this by society. I should be successful. I should get married. I should. Because someone told me that this is the way to be respectable and happy. Someone has been lying to me. And if you tell them that they've been lying to you, they'll lie about that. If I can have no idea at all about who I am and what I should do, that would be the end of the whole business. Then I can use ideas properly for getting from here to the motel, or building a home, or trimming the orange trees out there. Now let me ask you one final question before we have open discussion and questions. Write this down, please. Just very short. This should be like a flash of lightning to you. You wait, you'll see. Okay. Write down, who is there to get out? Who is there to get out? Look what this does. Huh? For heaven's sake, there was no one there to even get out. Think about it. If there was what do we make it? If there was a horse in this room, you'd have to lead it out, get it out of here, wouldn't you? If there's no horse here, how are you going to get a non-existent horse out of the room? How can you get rid of a non-existent self? See it, and that is out. Not a little bit out. Altogether out. It's incredible. So, when the boss comes over, and you see that something is up, you can put yourself into his place, because you no longer have a place for yourself. You're out. And you see him, this is real compassion. You can see that poor man, he's trying to let me down as gently as possible. You see how nervous and afraid he is, how embarrassed he is by it. Because you're out, you can put yourself into his place. Okay, I'll leave you with this. What are you wasting your time for, trying to get out when there's no one there to get out? See that, and you're out. You see? Do you see the key? You know what I'm afraid of? You're going to walk right out of here and say, that was fairly interesting. What shall we have for dinner? Okay, comments, questions? Yes, Larry.
I can see where if my personality is habits that I have learned from another, they in actuality are not factual. They are not me. All right? If I labor under the struggle of conditioned habits that I have learned from the outside, I'm trying to think of how can I lead a horse out that's not real? Why should I be concerned as myself with something I have learned as a habit from you or you?
Well, that's what we're getting at. That's what we're getting at, Larry. Why should you be concerned? Why should you be concerned with your own worry? We know the answer to that. We've covered that. Because you love your worry. Because if you worry, for example, you can complain, both inwardly and to other people. You wouldn't know what to do if you didn't have something to complain about. Right. Yes.
When you say something like, who is there to get out? I get a feeling there's certainly something in me that can understand it, but there's so much else in me that then says, well, what is it?
All right. Okay. Because, Dick, and everyone, you were thinking about it instead of seeing it with pure seeing. You can't think your way out. If you think, I must get out, there's an I who must get out. So you've made your own trap. Okay, I understand. The time will come when you understand. Okay, we'll go into it a little bit. That it is possible for you to put one split second of silence between two thoughts. And as you work at first, you think all day. Don't your minds drive you nuts all day long? Huh? They do, don't they? They drive you nuts. They do. Larry agrees. You work. You work on this. You will see someday, walking down the street, working in the kitchen, all of a sudden you will see a split second of clarity which is not thinking at all. Therefore, it is not you thinking at all. There is awareness, there's clearness, there's understanding. That means, look what this means. It means for one split second out of that 24 hours of the day, for one split second, you cease to exist as the old, artificial, troublesome, worried you. That much. Okay. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you see this once, you'll be phoning Dick and say, could we have meetings every night this week? That's what you'll be doing. If you see that much. Because now you've got it. Now you see that it is possible to live in this world using thought properly and not using it improperly by building a me, a self. But this means the end of you and I, doesn't it? Which is exactly what we're doing here, which is why we have so much resistance, because we're afraid of this death of the pseudo-self, the false self. And I'll tell you, we're going to be brave, courageous. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We really are. Nothing is going to stop us because there's nothing to stop us. There's nothing to stop you except our own illusions, our own resistance, our own fear of letting go. Don't you tell me that. Who will I be unless I can scream all day about my rights?
And then one split second after that split second of silence, my mind jumps on me and says, am I insane or am I senile?
Yeah, you'll go back.
Goes into conflict.
Yeah, sure. You'll go back to the old ways. But you know, it's a tremendous thing. Isn't it, Juan? It's a tremendous thing. You've seen it. The devil is all washed up. He's going to keep coming back and battling. But you've seen it. You've got it. Boy, I'll try to tell you. You'll phone Dick and say, how about afternoon meetings as well as evening meetings? I want to go faster. I want to get this. See, this is not the way of intellectualism. It's a part of it. This is the way of feeling something. Feeling something you've never felt before. Something that is right, something that is true. How many of you know what it means to be decent to another human being? Do any of you know what it means to be decent? You don't, do you? You know the word. Giving a Christmas gift or a birthday gift is not being decent. Decency is not on the level of thinking. It's on the level where this split second of non-existence to your false self becomes your total way of life, so that you're not cunningly using other people for your own benefits anymore. What do you want from other people? You want their approval? You want sex from a woman, from a man? You want their votes? What do you want from them? All this cunning of getting things from people is gone. And now, at last, after all these years of thinking you were decent, you really are. And what a relief. How nice that I don't have to pretend anymore. Oh, the bricks are off my back at last. What I feared to do was my only salvation, my deliverance. I didn't see it. I fought. I lied. I pretended. Until I got so tired I didn't want to fight anymore. I don't want to go on this way anymore. Then the miracle begins. Right. I have to be thoroughly beaten. No fight left. Not in despair, because despair is fighting. If you're in despair, you're loaded with hostility. Okay, we don't condemn it. We just see it as a fact, right? We're seeing everything as a fact, not as a condemnation. If I see I'm loaded with hostility, I can learn to drop that by seeing that I can simply drop it right now and be in this other state of understanding, which means I have to die to me. As long as I'm hostile, I think I exist in this false sense. The end of me is the end of all my problems and the beginning of whole, capital W-H-O-L-E, whole living. Then there are no more tears, because you're not shedding tears over anyone, because there is no one there to shed tears over. Who are you crying over? We always cry over ourselves, don't we? Huh? Maybe pretending it's for someone else or for a cause. Do you know how bad it is in this world? You make up your mind you're not going to go along with it anymore. We talked about getting off the bus at the last meeting. You get off the bus and you stay off. We'll all help. We're all helping each other here to stay off the bus. This bus of bumps and taking us nowhere. We're here to help each other. Not sentimentally, but actually. Okay, let's take a little break.
There will be a comment and hard question. I suppose a man has worry all his life about everything, about a wife, girlfriend, business, everything. And then he happens to get into this type of work. Now he's worrying about this. It is the same self that was trying to do something out in life and is trying to do it here. The same frustrating self, which never accomplished anything over there, didn't have control or could do anything. And now he's using this in the same setup he had before, keeping him very frustrated. Right?
That's a very good point, isn't it? Isn't that excellent? The same old phony who is going to be a success in business or a success at the men's club or whatever, very good. That same old phony is now going to become spiritual. And so he becomes, quote, spiritual, and you can hardly stand to be around him. Very good. So the whole business has to collapse, as Juan pointed out. This whole false entity, person, has to vanish. Then you are spiritual, but there's no word there. There's no label, is there? There's no need to tell you that I'm spiritual. It's just there. And you don't even use the word, but we're using words deliberately for a purpose here. In other words, it's just as wrong to want to be somebody spiritually as commercially. It's all one thing. What else?
I know you have given thousands of experiments to us, and I endeavor to ask for another one. With what was just said, I am aware that of what he just said fits me. All my life, anything I tried, I could accomplish. Now I can accomplish being a spiritual member of the group and quote the books. This same thing now is the same pattern as before with a different label on it.
Larry, would you put your chair up or something, please?
this same thing I'm going through now of being a Krishnamurti Vernon Howard student is the same pattern with a different label on it. Of this I'm aware. I'm fully aware of that. Now, may I ask for something else, even though you've given us hundreds, that will help me break or see some project, some experiment. All right,
Okay, all right. I've told you, it's very simple. How much can you take without falling back into the old defensive thought patterns? If you could take more, you would be given more. You can't take very much. I can look at your faces and tell how much you can take and how much you can't. I know how far I can go without you spilling over into a defensive attitude. Now you're gone. You won't hear a thing. You're protecting yourself. You can stop protecting yourself and look at it as a fact. You have you have a lot of hidden hostility, suppressed hostility. You have that in you. Why don't you just see it as a fact first? Then you can drop it. And if you see it as a fact, if you label it, that is, identify with, I'm hostile, therefore I have to stop being so hostile, and then you'll put on a mechanical smile and still be as hostile as you were before, right? But if you take it as a fact, I am hostile, then understand why you retain this hostility, because it's a part of this protective armor of me, of I. I have a reputation of some kind, of being spiritual, being a good man, of being a man who can accomplish things. This is my label. You touch it, I get hostile, because I'm afraid of not being this phony person. See? If I can see you challenge my image I have of myself, if I can see that my hostility is a defense, an attempt to keep this phony person in place, now I can deal intelligently with it, because I can begin to see how this protective and hostility and the pain. Don't you know how you're suffering when you're hostile? When you're angry? Don't you know you're in hell? Well, let me ask you, do you or don't you?
Yes.
When you're hostile, you are suffering terribly. When I can see all these things together at once, see them as facts, and not do anything with the fact, but learn what it means to drop a fact, you change. Because the fact is held in place by a false thought process. And Dick asked, or I answered at least, about getting this one blank space between thoughts. That is the collapsing, the beginning of the collapsing of this me. Always so tense, always waiting for someone to make a remark against my race, against my position, my authority. Boy, no wonder we're exhausted at the end of the day. All this energy put in protecting ourselves. How much can you take? That's how fast you can go. You may be completely unaware of how protective you are. So become aware of it. And let people insult you if they want. Not just here. Look, your classroom was out down there at work when the boss comes over and tells you you're fired. That's your classroom. So that you have no defense. If you have no defenses at all, how can you be bothered by anything? Which is not lack of intelligence. To the contrary, it's total intelligence. It is not very intelligent to walk around with a bag that has 15 masks of different kinds, smiling, scowling, intelligent mask, whatever it might be, and picking them out one at a time and quickly when no one's looking at her, and put it on and take it off when a new mask is called for. You call that intelligence? Carrying that bag around is enough. Besides, I'm very afraid that you're going to see through that mask, which you very often do, by the way. But you play the game. You're just as phony as I am. You've got your own bag of masks. And so we destroy each other. We meet and say we love each other, and we destroy each other. We lie, and we lie. That's the way it has been, huh? Been no other way but this. Take the bag. Don't litter. You're not supposed to litter anymore. Take the bag and put it in the trash can. Look at yourself the next time you feel bad. Now, what is so difficult about that? You feel bad about anything. The price of coffee went up. And you feel bad about it. Can't you look at yourself the minute you look at that price? You are a slave to the grocery man who takes that stamp and puts a new stamp on the coffee jar. You are his slave. Really your slave. Now, I'll tell you a big secret. This ought to just make you walk out of here lightly as you've ever walked before. You don't have to change the world at all. We all have savior complexes. We're going to save our children. We're going to save society. We're going to save sinners. Is there no end to our egotism that we can save someone else and we can't even save ourselves? There's no end to vanity, is there? But this, again, is a trick of the false self. If I can save you and give you profound wisdom and advice on how to find yourself, if that is my image, I've played a pretty clever trick on myself. I've kept myself in place. Let's put all our energy on saving ourselves instead of saving the man out there who will play the same game and exploit us as we're exploiting him. You exploit someone, you're going to get exploited by them because you're on the same flat level of exploitation. And it's your own fault, or my own fault. Don't work for tomorrow or next week and what we're learning here. You're supposed to be working right now. Don't be ashamed of yourself for anything. Let me repeat. Don't you dare be ashamed of anything. You know that awful habit you can't break? Huh? You know what it is. Mental habit, whatever it is. Mental habit, physical habit. Don't you be ashamed of anything. We're here to be free of shame. Don't you see? Yeah, you know. Don't you see you're not condemned for anything at all? You're not condemned. You think you are, and that is your vanity again, or my vanity. And incidentally, if you condemn yourself, you'll use every opportunity to condemn her or him, because that's your level of condemnation. Do you know what it means to look at another human being, no matter how rude they might be, without condemning them, but seeing the fact of it? The waitress, the man you work alongside of, don't you know how badly he's suffering? Don't you condemn yourself for any habit you have. Seeing our slavery is one thing, a good thing, and the right thing. Condemning yourself for it is a wrong thing. Now, what could be simpler than that? Seeing it is one thing, condemning yourself is another thing, and a wrong thing. I don't care what it is. Yes?
That's pretty good. Condemning myself. Feeling guilty, right?
Right.
And if I do that, let's say, for instance, that God or something is going to condemn me, right, for being bad or something. And if I do that, it means I'll be doing it to others, right?
You have to.
Very big cruelty.
Right. Because that's our level. That's all we know.
Yeah.
If I can compare myself with you, you're a big sinner, then I can call myself a saint, can't I? Which is delusion and sickness. I can't do any comparison at all. No comparison at all. Not even with myself. Listen. 10 years ago, the woman says, 10 years ago, I was vice president of the company, I was younger, I was slenderer, I had better eyesight, I had it made. Today, what happened to me? I'm older, my hair is grayer and thinner, I've gained weight, my finances aren't what they used to be. Boy, I'd like to get that man in this class so he could see that nothing is wrong except the way he's seeing himself and therefore life. This is the man that would ask for morning classes as well as afternoon and evening classes, if you'd see that little bit, see it just that much. So you can't compare yourself in time, either past or future. Today I'm in a certain situation, but next week and next year things are going to be okay. Wait till I get that pension and that Social Security raise. I'm going to write to my congressman to make sure he votes for it. Then I've got it. The man is a nervous wreck. His wife is just as bad, and they comfort each other, and they destroy each other. They keep each other asleep. Someone, one of the two of them, is going to have a lot more courage than they have. Not to do anything bad to their spouse, like hurting their feelings and say, from now on I'm going to be spiritual, but to work quietly, to start to change himself or herself, regardless of what the other person wants to do. Boy, you know it takes a lot of persistence and a lot of courage, but the rewards are endless. You just try sometime. You have to see what it means, and that in itself is a long time. See what it means to just let yourself go. Let yourself go to the point where there's no one there to let go. The idea of letting go is gone. See? Because that is thinking. It's okay, we have to do it. That's where we are. The idea of thinking I should let go. First place, who's going to let go and who are you letting go? There's a double illusion. But this is along the path a little further. But we're starting. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the self-condemnation being another device to keep me preoccupied. I couldn't stay in the room the first hour this morning. My mind just kept flitting all over the spirit of the people and this and that. I told Joan about it at the break, and she said, well, to see that. Instead, there was disgust with myself. I was so disgusted, and angry at myself that's what I brought back into the room. And, of course, kept me out of the room again.
Yes, indeed.
It just kept it rolling rather than to...
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Don't bring any of these imposters in here that keep you from learning. Leave them outside there. Don't bring them in here or you won't get what you could be getting. That's a good point. Oh, the work we have to do. Whew. It's okay. It's all right. No problem. We're going to do it. So. Because I can do it every second, can't I? Can't you? You can work every second. When you're out there in the kitchen, driving down to the motel. Yes.
You're in the past classes, when you speak of joining a group to fight against another group to get a right idea. Locally here, the Luke Air Force Base has recently refused military retirees, which is our right by a piece of paper. There's a man in town now that wants to stir up everybody to write to Congress to get us...
I'd like to see your hands, please. This will connect with what you said, Larry. How many of you understand at least a little bit that you can no longer join the madness of this world if you want out. You see, you can't do what you used to do, huh? You can't live that way anymore. You can't trade for what you want from people. And don't say, please, well, I have to earn a living. Why don't you earn your living? Why do you complicate it by asking questions? Just earn your living. Don't trade with the world. It has nothing for you to begin with, and it's about time we saw this. Which does not mean resistance, does it? Doesn't mean you understand you're not fighting anybody anymore? Not the boss, not society, not inflation. You're not fighting anyone or anything anymore, because it is the fighting that keeps the problem in place. If I cease to fight the problem must come to an end. Because it's on the level of fighting, which is on the level of thought. Conditioned mechanical thought. Connected with a lot of feeling, a lot of false feelings, a lot of emotion. Have the courage to give up exciting but self-destructive feelings. You might even write that down. Have the courage to give up exciting but self-destructive feelings. You know one of them? I'll give you one of them as soon as you're through writing. In 2 words. And it has an exclamation point at the end of it. I'll tell you, let's put it this way. I'll tell you how to destroy yourself systematically in a minute. Shut it off for a second. I'll tell you how to destroy yourself systematically. Go through life with an exclamation, I won, W-O-N, exclamation point. Just go through life that way, and you'll be a miserable little neurotic the rest of your life.
Write that down. I've done that over my life.
Or, I lost, exclamation point. You see the point, don't you? I won, I lost. What a way to go through life. Aren't you glad you found this group? I am.
It connects with when you win, you lose also.
Yeah. When you win, you lose. You always lose. How's this? How's this for something? The I always loses. No way it can win. How can a delusion win anything? All we can do with a delusion is get rid of it. Not to try to make it look real, which the world is doing. Look at your news programs on television and you'll see a deluded world trying to make delusion look like reality. Trying to make nothing look like something. Now I'll tell you what is happening. This will clarify your mind. Anyone? Yes.
When you mentioned a moment ago how much we can take, for near a year I've kept saying give me more, and then I've seen that I couldn't handle more. I wasn't ready, so to speak, all right? It went through my head the other day, when we were small children, we played with dominoes and we stacked little houses of different shapes with them. I'm relating that to my emotional or psychological conditioning, where I stand at 50 years. I might at this time look back in the structure of dominoes and see the weak point down there. But for me, psychologically or emotionally, to try to reach down and straighten up that block would collapse the whole structure down. The only thing I can do is what you say, is to see it, remove the top dominoes until I get down to that weak one, psychologically, straighten it up, and then rebuild with a different load of, like I say, silver bricks instead of...
All right. If you want to use that as an example, okay.
Mm.
Obviously, we have to let the whole thing collapse, which means we're going to have to be in a different state than whatever had been before, which is to be consciously afraid, which is to be, in the state we mentioned earlier, in a state of endured doubt. Instead of grabbing that book or what that man said or what my desires say will keep me safe. Let me add another point, though. Whew, what a relief this should be. Oh. If you let the house of dominoes collapse completely, that is all you have to do. If you have any idea of rebuilding, you're right back where you started. Because your memory is going to rebuild it. I used to have a blonde girlfriend. I'll switch to a brunette. And you'll be in just as much trouble with her as with the other. There's nothing to be done except the destruction of the faults. Nothing else. Nothing else. But what work that is, huh? Okay. When you get this new embarrassment, you're being consciously embarrassed now instead of mechanically embarrassed, this shock of being fired, whatever it is, you do the one important thing when you feel like running away from all this, which is terrifying at times. I know it is. Very frightening. You come right back again and take more. Now, is there anything complicated about it? You say you want out? Let's see if you do. I'm speaking very personally now to every one of you. I'll just look around the room at every single one of you here. Let's see how much you endure with this, or whether you're sitting here unconsciously rejecting it or not. Let's see if you come back to take more hard stuff. If you do, you'll make it. If you don't, you won't, period. That's all there is to it. Very fortunately for you, you have come to a meeting where you're being told the truth, where you're not being given lies. I say this to you. This is a fact. You may not know this yet. You may have many doubts, but I'm telling you as a fact that this is what you're hearing here is the way out. Now, can you come back and take more disturbance to yourself, or rather to see the disturbance that you've always lived in, that habit? Remember how ashamed you were of it and are of it? We say come back with that habit. You don't blab about it. You don't blab your private life. Keep your mouth shut about your private life. But we say you have the courage to come back knowing you have that habit, whatever it is, or that shame, that cruelty. Remember how cruel you were years ago to that person? You remember. We say you come back anyway, in spite of it. You come back and listen, and sooner or later, Larry, the domino house will collapse. But you have to come back. If you go away, you're walking away from your own freedom, your own deliverance, your own relief. Very simple. Isn't that wonderful? That you can come here and really not be condemned? Be told how evil you are? Because if we told you how evil and bad you are, you understand. You are evil and you are bad. But we're trying to tell you that this is part of the jail cell. To call yourself evil and bad. See, evil and bad means to be asleep. Does that sound better? But I don't want to soften the jolt any. And you have to use strong words because then it hits people emotionally instead of intellectually. Which is why, on occasion, we say that we're all mad. Insane. What is insanity? Not from society's definition, but from the definition of reality with a capital R. Insanity simply means to be apart from yourself. And to be apart from myself is to be apart from you, therefore we're divided, therefore we fight. But if I am one with me, how can I fight with anybody? There's no division. Don't you listen to anyone. You, one or two young people here. Don't you be influenced by anyone. You are not being influenced here at all. You're being told the facts, the truth, and now you do with them what you want. You have nothing to give to the truth at all. That's part of our vanity. To thinking that our royal presence here contributes something. Let's get rid of that.
I think I have to say something about that. That I have something to offer.
Speak up loud.
Yes, I'm going to speak loud. When I first came here, I thought I had something to offer. And the only thing I had to offer was my own hostility and envy and jealousy. But I had to offer. Yes, that vanity is very strong. That I could save others, help others. And got angry every time I was told to possess such knowledge or understanding.
That was what he had to go through. How many things can you find? How many things can I find that I can go through consciously in order to not be an enemy to myself anymore? The enemy is right there, isn't it? Boy, if we identified the enemy right there, right in the mind. Yes.
You mentioned, Vernon, that we have to be aware of how much we can take. And this is really a daily thing, isn't it? Where we can really, if we're working, we can tell when events happen what we can really take.
Okay, you're out there in a hurry, you go out a flat tire. That is what we're talking about in this class. How are you going to react when you see that flat tire? Are you going to act intelligently or neurotically? Are you going to do what is necessary on the everyday level? Go to the phone and phone the man and say, I have a flat tire, I'll be a few minutes late, something like that? Or are you going to react wrong? I don't know how you react. You have to find out. And if you want a better example, get your own. How do you react at work when something goes wrong? How much can you take? Right. But not necessarily about you being told that you're living an illusion. You may even like that because now you say, well, at least I exist as someone who lives an illusion. I'm talking about the lessons out there. When you walk into the motel room, when you talk with your wife at night and she says something that hits you wrong, how much can you take without reacting in resentment, disgust, contempt, whatever?
But I understand correctly, though, that our real job at first is simply to observe this, to simply observe our upset, to observe how neurotic we are. This is the first step.
Right. But may I leap way ahead now? The time will come. Don't try to work on what I'm going to tell you now. You work on what was just said to see it. Observe it, see it. The time will come when even the observer ceases. Because the observer and the observed, as some of you have read, are on the same level. And to make it quite simple, if I have no hostility in me because I understand what it means to die to my acquired self, my phony self, if I have no hostility in me, what's there to observe to begin with? See? And the end of the hostility is the end of the observer too, because they're both on the same level. So their observation simply comes down finally to practical life. instead of me observing my hostility anymore, because I've worked so long and so hard, so enthusiastic, that it's gone, because I no longer need to call myself hostile. It's a great ego pleasure to call myself hostile. You ever notice how some people like to make a dramatic show out of it, tell you how angry they, boy, I really blew up at him. Man, they're waiting for your applause. So eventually the observer comes to an end too. There's nothing to observe. But let's start to observe for many years now, till we can learn to drop what we see. I see pride of accomplishment in me. I drop it. I drop the thought that I am somebody who accomplished something. Because if you have pride in accomplishment, how is this for a follow-up remark? If you have pride in accomplishment, you are violent. Right? Huh? You are violent. I don't have to explain to us. I am the accomplisher. The I is violence. Then you see, there is nowhere to go but just a place to be. We say there's a place to go, and we use illustrations which are quite helpful and valuable. I must go from, religious literature says, from the desert to the mountain. Fine, we understand that you're using a figure of speech to get the idea over. The time comes when there's no place to go because there's no one there to go anywhere. If a bus pulls up at the bus stop and there's no one there at the bus stop, how can there be anyone getting on to go anywhere? There's no one there waiting at the bus stop. And to carry the illustration a bit, there's no place to go because you were there and always were. I just didn't see it. You just didn't see it. But we're here to see it. That's why we're here in this room, to see it together. I'm going to repeat something, because I know how things go, and so do you. For your sake, come back to it. Come back to this. Come back to these things. Both in the meeting and at home, when all the world presses in on you again. You're the 10th man in line at the grocery market and you have to get home to meet an appointment. There is the time to work. Don't you listen to anyone. Don't you be influenced by anyone. Their sickness is trying to make you sick. I don't care how impressive they are, how self-assured they are. They have simply reached down into that bag for that mask. And if you don't see it yet, it's because you still have your bag of masks. You get rid of your bag of masks and put it in the litter can, that man's mask can never fool you again. Right? You'll see a pathetic human being there who's trying to do what you and I used to do years ago. Huh? You see how pathetic it is? I don't mean sentimentally. You'll know that you can't say anything to him, won't you? Mm-hmm. You know you can't talk to him. You learn to keep your mouth shut, except those who really want it. Because for one thing, we're no longer trying to save the world, are we? The world does not want saving. It wants lies, it wants dramatic spectacles, it wants physical movement, it wants its own egotism, which we don't condemn, but we see. Because our self-condemnation has ceased too. And then you take that deep breath.